Let's talk about what it means to be a critical reader. Let's say you're reading something and you come across this statistic. 87% of Americans believe that the moon is made of cheese. Do you believe that information? Why or why not? Or let's say you're reading and you come across something that says one key to success is perseverance. Do you agree with that? Do you believe it when you read it? Why or why not? Essentially, what we're doing as we think about these two pieces of information that we might come across in our reading is we're thinking about what it means to be a critical reader. And a critical reader is someone who asks questions about information. They ask if the information makes sense, if it connects with prior knowledge or prior life experience. Is it supported by evidence? Or does it include an identified credible source? Is the source of the information cited? As we get more experience as readers, then we begin to do this sort of intuitively and with less effort. But it's a skill. It's not something that we're just born with. It's a skill. So what does it mean to be a critical reader? It means reading actively, paying close attention and keeping focus on our reading so that we are paying attention and both comprehending and thinking about the information that comes. But that leads to a more fundamental question, which may seem like a little bit of a ridiculous question. What does it mean to read? We often think about reading as a function of our eyes, but our eyes are just the conductor of information. It's taking words on a page or on a screen to our brains so that we can think about it. So reading is an act of thinking. It is not an act of looking. If we are looking at words on the page while we're bouncing back and forth between our phones or something that we're streaming or a conversation, then we're not really engaging our brains in the act of reading, so we're just looking. We're not actually reading. So I've talked about reading actively involves thinking. So reading and thinking, we see the connection there, but let's also think about how writing comes into it. The three of those things together are really interdependent. So it is not, if we want to optimize our reading abilities, we need to both be thinking about what we're reading, but also writing, and writing while we read, not after we have completed reading. And keeping that interconnection between these three will build all three of those skills that are so fundamental for success, both in college and in the world after college in our careers. So what does it mean? How do we write while we read? Taking notes. Taking notes is really one of the most important things we can do to improve our reading skills. When I was in high school, I was a pretty good reader. It didn't really cause me a lot of problems. But then I went to college and I really struggled with the kind of reading that we do in college. And I would take reading quizzes and not perform well on those quizzes. So I learned to take notes. I developed that skill and it helped me to be a more successful reader throughout college. And to this day, anytime I read something that is difficult or that I need to retain, I take notes. I sit at my computer and or at a spiral notebook and I take notes. So when we take notes, we're looking for significant concepts from the reading, key terms. We're writing down questions that we have. We are summarizing information as we come across it. We're identifying contradictions or moments of emotional connection, making connection with other aspects of our lives or other information that we already know. And essentially, what we're doing as we take notes is we are writing a very brief summary of what the author is saying. And that helps us not only read it more carefully, which means we'll do better on a quiz or a class discussion about the reading. But it also gives us something if later on we need to take a test that includes that reading assignment or write a paper, we have notes that we can return to help us review the information. And then making connections is really important. When we get new information comes to us, if we can connect it with prior knowledge, with something we already know, if we can tie that new information onto previous information or previous life experiences, we are much more likely to hang on to it because now it's connected to something that we already know. If we don't make connections, then that information just sort of goes in one eye and out the other. So making connections is really important. So if you'll begin to practice these strategies for reading, especially when you find reading to be difficult, and in college, some of the reading you will do in college will be more difficult than what you're used to, then it's really going to help you to develop your skills as a reader.